The Second Mafia War, also referred to as the Great Slaughter, was a period marked by a radical change in the balance of power within the Sicilian Mafia, resulting in thousands of homicides and the serial assassination of mafia bosses. In addition to the violence within the mafia itself, there was violence against the state, resulting in the death of top politicians, judges, prosecutors, and police chiefs. The instigators of the Second Mafia War were the Corleonesi, the mafia clan in Corleone. Because they hailed from a small rural town, they were often marginalized by the powerful mafia bosses in the urban Palermo, who referred to them as I Vedani, meaning the peasants. However, when Luciano Leggio became the boss of the Corleonesi, after spraying his predecessor with machine gun bullets, his brutality and ambition drastically increased the power and prestige of the Corleonesi. Leggio was particularly embittered against the domineering Palermo mafia bosses, especially Stefano Bontate of the Santa Maria de Gesù family, Salvatore Inzerillo of the Passo di Rigano family, and Gaetano Badalamenti of the Cinisi family. After the rebirth of the Sicilian Mafia Commission in 1969, Bontate and Badalamenti were two of the three leaders chosen to head the commission. Leggio happens to be the third. Leggio initiated a campaign to dominate the Cosa Nostra and the flourishing heroin trade, mainly by forging a coalition with other mafia clans against the powerful Palermo bosses. Leggio mainly acted through his deputy Salvatore Toto Riina, as Leggio himself was wanted by authorities for murder charges. Riina is considered one of the most ruthless mob bosses in the history of the Sicilian Mafia. Riina bribed other bosses with cash, converted members of different clans into the Corleonesi, and secretly recruited new members into their clan. By the mid-1970s, Riina had won over powerful allies and was dominating the commission. His most prominent allies were Giuseppe Callo, boss of Porto Nuova, Filippo Marchese, boss of Corso de Mie, Rosario Riccobono, boss of Partana Mondello, and Michele Greco, boss of the Greco clan. In 1978, Riina had Badalamenti expelled from the commission on trumped-up charges. His place was taken by Michele Greco, a staunch ally of the Corleonesi. That same year, Riina ordered the assassination of two rival bosses, Giuseppe De Cristina of the Riesi clan and Giuseppe Calderone of the Catania clan. He then replaced both men with his supporters. With this move, Bontate and Inzerillo were completely isolated and were at Riina's mercy. Riina is renowned for many things. Being merciful is just not one of them. On April 23, 1981, Bontate died in a volley of machine gun bullets. 2 weeks later, Inzerillo was killed in a crowded bar in a hail of bullets, alongside innocent bystanders. Shortly after their demise, most of their associates and blood relatives were either found dead or vanished without a trace. Badalamenti, whom Riina had expelled from the commission, only managed to escape by fleeing from Sicily. Between 1981 to 1983, there were over 400 mafia killings in Palermo alone, over 400 mafia killings in other Sicilian cities, and at least 160 people vanished. Riina and other Corleonesi mobsters became notorious for what is referred to as the lupara bianca, or the white gun, whereby a person is killed and buried immediately without a trace. On November 30, 1982 alone, 12 members of the mafia were murdered in Palermo in 12 separate incidents by Riina's death squad of hitmen. The leader of the death squad was Giuseppe Greco, nephew of Michele Greco, the boss of the Greco clan and Riina's trusted ally. Giuseppe Greco is alleged to have personally killed over 80 people on Riina's behalf, including Bontate and Inzerillo. The assassinations extended even across the Atlantic, with the murder of Inzerillo's brothers in New Jersey and Badalamenti's nephews in Germany. Throughout the war, the Italian police were in a perpetual state of confusion. They witnessed unprecedented levels of mass murders and serial assassinations without knowing what was going on. Furthermore, the Corleonesi did a good job spreading false information to keep the Italian police confused. For example, the police were convinced that Inzerillo was responsible for Bontate's murder, but before they could arrest him, Inzerillo himself was killed 2 weeks later. The Corleonesi and their allies were overwhelmingly victorious in the Second Mafia War, suffering very few casualties. Though their victory has been attributed to the brutality of Riina, their privacy and secretiveness also played a significant role. For example, unlike other mafia bosses who led very public lives, Leggio, Riina, Provenzano, and other Corleonesi lived like fugitives. They were rarely seen by other members of the mafia, let alone the general public. Also, they kept their alliances with other mafia families a secret. That way, even their enemies could not tell who their allies were. This was the case of Emanuele D'Agostino, a Corleonesi rival who sought refuge at the home of Rosario Riccobono, mafia boss of Partano Mondello, not knowing Riccobono was secretly in alliance with the Corleonesi. D'Agostino was never heard from again. Also, after the death of Bontate and Inzerillo, many of their associates sought refuge with other Corleonesi allies and vanished without a trace. By the mid-1980s, two Italian magistrates, Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, launched a campaign against the Sicilian Mafia. The magistrates made a big breakthrough in December 1984 when they arrested Tommaso Buscetta, a mafioso who decided to collaborate with the police following the murder of almost his entire family by Riina. Buscetta's two sons vanished in September 1982, followed by the death of his brother, then his brother-in-law, and then his four nephews, all within a couple of weeks. For more than 45 days, Buscetta provided detailed information to the magistrates about the inner workings of the Cosa Nostra, the system of hierarchy, the 10 commandments of the Mafia, the Sicilian Mafia Commission, the conflicts between the various clans, and the atrocities of the Corleonesi. For the first time, the Italian police had a clear understanding of what was really going on. It was Buscetta who revealed that the deaths of De Pisa and Manzella, which sparked the outbreak of the First Mafia War, were actually perpetrated by Cavatio and had nothing to do with the heroin shipment to New York. This information was unknown even to Riina and other mafia bosses. Buscetta's testimony resulted in what would be known as the Maxi trial, which until today is the largest trial in world history. It was held in a missile-proof bunker that could accommodate 1,000 people and had a computerized system for archiving documents. 475 mafia members were indicted, and 338 were sentenced to a total of 2,665 years, not including the multiple life sentences handed to each of the 19 mafia bosses. The trial lasted 6 years, from January 10, 1986 to January 30, 1992. By this time, Riina and other Corleonesi leaders and hitmen were in hiding. They were each given multiple life sentences in absentia. During the trial, one of the convicted mafia members, Salvatore Riina, wept and confessed to Buscetta that he had strangled 2 of Buscetta's sons to death. In response, Buscetta smiled and gave him a hug, saying, "I forgive you, my friend, because I know what it means to be in the mafia. You were only obeying orders." Please use the end screens that appears towards the end of this video to move to the next episode, the previous episode, or access the full video. Thank you for watching.